Gjennom hele dagen så forsøker vi å finne gode eksempler som illustrerer de temaene vi tar opp. Og de neste paneldeltagerne, de representerer initiativ og banebrytende teknologi for å sikre digital inkludering. Christina Holst is a PhD researcher at the Faculty of Medicine at the University in Oslo. She is coordinating the DigI-project, which is all about non-discriminating access for digital inclusion. Miora Randriambeloma is African Business Development and Partnerships Director at KaiOS Technology. KaiOS is the leading mobile operating system for smart feature phones, with more than 110 million devices in over 100 countries. To moderate this session, we have Kari Mo Jacobsen, the program coordinator for the Digitalisation for Development program at Norad. And she also holds a PhD in innovation and entrepreneurship. Welcome them all on stage.
Thank you. So, after hearing about the state of digital inclusion and the barriers that many marginalized people are still facing to be included in our digital society, I'm very excited to hear your examples of how you are working to promote digital inclusion. So I think I'll start with you, Christine. At Basic Internet Foundation, you're promoting digital inclusion for all through what you call Internet Lite. And I've heard you describe this as a toll road, where access for pedestrians and cyclists is free, but access for cars and trailers is by payment. So could you explain to us a little bit more what Internet Lite actually is?
Sure, I can. It's actually a quite easy package of equipment that is not too hard to roll out. When it's rolled out, we have an information spot or a hotspot. And on this Wi-Fi that we provide, we have basically three options. You can access basic internet pages for free. That is pages with text and pictures that are really affordable to browse, while more expensive commercial content, for example, streaming, downloading, that will be the paid part. And this is the basis for the sustainable and inclusive internet for all. In addition to this, we have also the village server in each of our project villages with local content. In our case, it's health education, health information. For example, animations, which would be expensive to stream, but we keep it locally. So it's the basic access that is free for all, and it's the paid access for commercial content, and then it's the local content that we place on the server.
Thank you. I think that sounds clear to me. If anyone has questions, I'm sure you can elaborate also in the breaks later.
Absolutely.
And you are currently working in Tanzania to promote digital inclusion in rural villages.
Yes.
What is the key lesson that you've learned from this project?
The key lessons are that there's a need for information in the rural villages that we work in. There's a need for communication between people. We got very early in the project to a small rural town called Isasi, where people actually traveled to the next village in order to charge their phone and to send them a WhatsApp. So there's so much need. Also, the other key lessons from this project is that the local collaboration in the project villages is key for success. Not only for our main partners in Tanzania on the health sides, but the people that are on the ground, the communities, we are just totally dependent on their feedback in order to have a good project that is sustainable and works perfectly in the villages. And the final key lesson is that we have to address the gender gap. So in our case, we are placing tablet devices so that everyone can access, that you don't have to rely on a smartphone, which very often more men have than women. And here is also where Miora's solution is perfect, because you can then access with your old Nokia phone, really.
Yeah, that's a perfect slide into hearing more about what KaiOS is working on. So KaiOS is the third most used operating system in the world. And it's a light operating system that makes advanced functionalities available for so-called smart feature phones. So could you explain to us what the difference between a smart feature phone and a feature phone is, Miora?
Sure. I actually brought a slide, if we could show it on the screen, because these are sort of new words at the moment. So a smart feature phone is what you'll see in the middle, but to explain that, as you can see on the slide, on your left side, most people today in the world use this type of phone, a feature phone, right? That is not connected, it's a low UX, and it basically allows you to send text and call. All of us in this room today probably use smartphones that are connected to the internet, that have apps, and etc. But as we said in previous sessions today, and as Christine also highlighted, the majority of the population in the world today is still not connected for different reasons, such as affordability, literacy, and etc. Just to give you an example, to own a smartphone today, according to the figures, you should make more than $14 a day income, which is not the case in most African countries. When you look at Ethiopia and Nigeria, the most populous and the most growing economies, the average income is still around $8. So that immediately makes you, not connected and not able to afford the devices, the smartphones, but also afford the data. The data is still very expensive. So what we do at KaiOS is we have developed a mobile operating system that is light and that allows you to essentially give internet capabilities to the simple phones that you have on this side and bridge that into one device that is smart feature phone. So we bring the best of smartphones with internet and apps, that connectivity, and also the simplicity of a feature phone. So it looks like this, basically. As a user, you know how to use a feature phone. You're used to this simple design, and we add connectivity, internet, and apps elements for first-time internet users, really.
So interesting. And what is your market for this? And what makes you different from other providers? Like, who would be your typical user of this product?
So basically what we're trying to do is to connect the next 3 billion, 4 billion people in the world that are still stuck with a feature phone that cannot afford that, and provide them with this new kind of phone, really the first-time internet users, whether they're in Africa, there's 800 million of them, or Asia, or even Latin America, and also in more advanced economies like in Europe or the US, some people are left out of the digital economy. Older populations, for instance, that have not been able to use smartphones and all these very sophisticated devices are also benefiting from that. So our market is really first-time internet users. We started in India in 2017, and as of last month, we brought 100 million people online with a partnership with a mobile operator called Reliance Jio. And what we've seen is that it's obviously women are benefiting from that in rural areas, but also the unconnected and hard to connect areas that nowadays mobile operators don't necessarily go to yet. But with KaiOS, we've seen a lot of partnerships that we're bringing on board that hopefully will finally connect those people in everywhere in the world.
Mm. You mentioned when we talked earlier also something about the availability of different local languages. Could you elaborate a bit on that?
Yeah, so one of the things why we're different, to answer your question, is that we really, it's one thing to have those phones and those devices in the store on the shelves out there, but to make it work and to really reduce the usage gap that Claire from GSMA was explaining earlier, users need to find locally relevant content on the phones, which means that it needs to be useful and they need to understand it as well. And when you look at the web today, I think there's only half of the content on the web today is in English, right? But only 5% of the global population is native English speaking. So you're leaving out, most of the people basically out of understanding why it's relevant for them, why it's interesting for them. And we try to integrate as much local languages as possible, not only on the phone, but also in terms of applications. One of the things that we do is we want to connect with contributors, developers that will bring useful applications in local languages for their communities. So, I mean, we have WhatsApp on the phones, we have, all the Google suite of apps and etc. But what we want to do is really bring useful, locally relevant apps onto the phone so that first-time internet users will understand the benefit of a digital lifestyle, the benefit of accessing an app or website, etc.
Thank you. Christine, I know in your PhD research you're working on disease prevention, early diagnosis and treatment of diseases such as HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and tapeworms. And you're doing this by providing digital health education in rural communities in Tanzania. So why is digital inclusion important for such health efforts?
I think it's important because this is one of the beautiful things about digital health information or digital health education is that you are able to address such big groups. For example, in our project, we work with animations, of course, with local language and local characters. It's a story from Tanzania. People relate to it. And what I see is that actually with digital health education, you can become health literate, even if you cannot read. So it's really interesting how the potential is there to reach so many people. Also, I think when you make it accessible in rural communities, you have a spillover effect that is great, has a great potential for disease prevention. Yes, so I think that's good examples. I have one more.
Yeah.
Yeah. When the local content, because digital health and digital health education is so dependent on the context in order to become successful. So I think it's, again, back to the local collaborations, which, again, promotes the inclusiveness. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think it's most important for disease prevention to address broad groups.
Mm. Thank you. Miora, KaiOS was recently recognized by Time magazine as one of the best inventions of 2019 in the social good category. So congratulations for that. What services do you bring that make an impact on the lives of your users?
Yeah, so, as I said earlier, it's one thing to make those phones available on the markets and to put it in the hands of the users, but for people who have not used the internet before, it's really confusing and also difficult to understand the value of all of that. So one of the things that we have on the phones, we have an app that is called Life, and it's a free app, and we curate content from partners, NGOs with information that we think will be useful for those users, so that when they open the phone, of course they will have WhatsApp, they will have YouTube and etc., but it will also have this app that gives them access to useful information on health, for instance, on agriculture. So we work with companies like We Farm in Africa that provide tips and information for farmers. Health as well, education. We have free content, basically for users to understand the value of having a connected phone, because otherwise, it would be, the usage would be quite limited, and the difference, the impact is really on the usage of the phones, and discovering this impactful services, health, education, all these things.
Yeah, that's very impressive. So just to quickly summarize up and conclude this panel, what kind of feedback have both of you received from your users, if you could summarize that very briefly? We can start with you, Christine.
Well, as I said, there's a need for information, so people are really happy when they're able to connect with not only the web, but each other through WhatsApp. And we also had a little survey now in the first follow-up in our health study, where people report that they have discussed the content with friends and family. So I think the feedback is thumbs up from the rural communities, definitely.
Mm-hmm. So I think for us, for KaiOS, because we're still we're a new mobile operating system, I think we have 3 types of users or partners, let's say. So obviously we have the end users, the people who benefit from the services on the phones, and we just launched several partnerships just this month in Africa, for instance, with some of the major mobile operators there, and the phones have sold out in just a few days. So the people, as you said, the people need the phones, the devices, because they need information. They need to communicate, and they need to have access to relevant services. Obviously, we partner with mobile operators for that as well. And we are creating a new category of devices that did not exist 3 years ago. And part of our work is to go to mobile operators and tell them, it's great to care about the few people that live in the cities and from whom you make a lot of money today, but what about 80%, the rest of the country or the areas where you are? These people also deserve, and for you commercially, it also makes sense. And we've seen, again, a lot of partners that are coming on board in Africa, in Asia, in Brazil, where we launched as well. So we are creating that category with them, and also, the people who actually make the phone themselves, the phone manufacturers, that also are now creating this new category with us, and we're reaching 150 million phones this year that are being shipped and being used. So it's really all across that, that value chain, from the users to the people who make the phones and the people who enable that. We see a lot of traction and interest. So yeah.
It's amazing. Thank you both so much. Let's give them a big round of applause.
Thank you.